Hello, everybody, and welcome into this round three recap from the 2023 Idaho Closed. To this point, I had finished the first day of competition Saturday, two games at 2-0. But those first two games were I was paired against people who were much lower rated than me. So that result is not not to be expected that I wouldn't be at 2-0 at this point. And I knew headed into round three or four, that was when it was really going to get challenging. Again, the Idaho Closed is a 6 round tournament. So let's see how round three went. There was still an outside shot that round three I could have had an opponent who was lower rated than me that I got paired against. Just because of the fact that there were over 50 people who were attending this state championship, and that is a record for Idaho. But that is not how this game round three played out. I arrived early Sunday morning. The round is earlier because we run our yearly business meeting in the afternoon, so we get started earlier on Sunday. So I arrived 8 a.m. for my game. Set up my live streaming equipment because this is the first tournament I've actually streamed my games on Twitch. So set up my phone and got that all going to record. And then found out who my opponent was. So my opponent is somebody I'm not sure how old he was when I started teaching him, but I know back when I first started teaching as a teenager, in my early years, working for two local companies. This was one of the kids I taught. To this day, he's only one of two kids I've ever taught that has actually passed me rating wise. So right now he is currently, after this state championship, he's like 25 points away from making expert. So very, very strong. He's got me beat by over 100 points. Very dangerous. I knew I was going to have to play very, very well to give myself a chance. I had the black pieces in this game. I knew he's an E4 player, so I wasn't too concerned about what I was going to play as black, because I know he's going to play E4 most likely, and I'm going to respond with the Sicilian defense. Now, here is where it gets interesting, because even though we don't have any classical games against each other, and that's been something we've joked about for a long time, we do have several speed games. And he also hangs out on my Twitch channel. He also hangs out when I stream on my Twitch channel. So he knows a lot about my playing style just from watching those games I play online. And we've had 4 speed games played in the last several months in tournament conditions. So he played knight f3, and here I paused. Why did I pause? Why did I take several minutes and debate here what I was going to do? Because this is actually an interesting moment, especially when somebody knows you. They know your playing style. They follow you on Twitch, so they know maybe different opening lines that seem to give you more issues. And that was the debate I was having here, because anybody who's followed me on Twitch knows that the lines right now that I don't like, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, or maybe I'm trying to trick you guys, who knows. Historically, the lines that have been giving me trouble recently are the Alapin, and on lines that I play knight c6, bishop b5, the Rosalimo, which are very, very popular right now, at a high level and at a lower level as well in chess. And here, knight c6 is a move I play all the time against most people. But I also know that he knows that c3 or bishop b5 are moves that annoy me. And I thought, if he has any respect for the main line openings that I play, he might try to confuse me, and he might play one of those lines I don't like. Maybe he's even been preparing along these lines. Who knows? But did decide to finally just stick with my gun and play knight c6, to which he replied d4. So I know we're going to get my favorite opening line at this point, and now I was feeling pretty comfortable. So c d4, knight d4, knight f6, attacking his e-pawn, and knight c3. And now a line that's I first played OTB. My first OTB game was actually a simul game in this line last year around this time when I played Alexander Fishbein in the Sheridan, Wyoming simul the night before the tournaments. I played this move. It was something I had worked on for several months, and I was ready to play it in a strong game. And so that simul game was the first game that I played H5 in. And anybody who's followed my content long enough knows that I got a fairly easy draw against the Grandmaster. In this line, yes, it was a simul game. It was a simul game, and so I know it's not as impressive to draw a Grandmaster, but I was still quite happy with the results. And this little H5 move is actually very, very strong. And you might be saying, well, what's the idea of this move? The idea is simply that if white plays a natural move like bishop e3, knight g4, there are a lot of ways that white can get himself in trouble, and I'm not really going to go into those. But somebody who knows, you know, the what would it be? The Yugoslav attack might play bishop e3 and get themselves in trouble here. So white actually does have to play carefully here. It's not like black's winning or anything. I'm not saying that, but h5 is very much a very strong move that's I think is only going to get more popular in the years ahead. So my opponent picked one of the strongest lines, which is h3. So maybe saying, I'll play bishop e3, but then you're not going to be able to put the knight on g4. So this is very strong by whites. What are some other options? Other options here, and I'm not going to play the bishop e3 lines. You can go bishop g5. You can go put bishop g5. And then black's going to go queen a5. And the idea of queen a5 is we just want to play knight takes e4 and exploit this pin on this knight, and also hit his bishop on g5. And usually the game will continue bishop takes f6, gf6, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but even though black's king side is kind of destroyed, he has the two bishops, and he has active compensation for the structural damage in the position. So this is a strong line. Bishop g5 is actually the most common move I probably see when I play this line online. If they're not going to play bishop g5 or bishop e3, they're probably going to go bishop c4. Bishop c4, we play e6. Simple chess. On h3, though, guys, you play e5. And we are creating a weakness on this d6 square, so we have to play. The reason I would encourage not everybody to play like this as black is because you have to be very, very dynamic, because you are going to be giving yourself some weaknesses in the position. One of the big weaknesses is you're not going to be able to kick any pieces off of d5 by white with pawns, because you already played e5. And on knight b5, which is what my opponent played, your opponent is threatening to jump into d6, which is annoying. And if you take with the bishop there, there's going to be queen d6, and then it's just a very, it can get very annoying for black. You have to be very accurate. So here you played d6. You played d6. So now the d6 square is covered twice. And if white plays this line, he's probably going to play bishop g5. The idea by bishop g5 is you're just going to play knight d5 and post up a knight on d5. You're going to be threatening forks on c7 if black's not careful. You also might play bishop takes f6, queen f6, and knight d5 in some lines, or bishop takes f6. You usually actually take with the g-pawn, and then knight d5. And you just have this nice bind on the position as white. d5 is very weak. Black has to play very accurately here. So a6 is the move hitting the knight, and now knight a3. And here I did have a little bit of a pause. Again, I've spent a lot of time studying these variations, but I don't have a lot of actual classical slow game experience in this position. So that makes it a little bit harder, and you have to spend a little bit of time trying to remember lines sometimes. And here I was having a debate whether or not I'm supposed to play b5 here, going for the fork. b5, he's going to go knight d5, getting away from the fork. So this is a nice line for white. And I couldn't remember if this is b5 is the correct move for black, what I should be doing here. And the move is actually bishop at e7 with the idea to go knight d5 and uncover an attack on his bishop on g5. So he is going to take on f6, and then black's going to take on f6, and white plays c3. And he has a bind on the d5 square, but black has some active possibilities if he plays correctly. But what I was really looking at is bishop e6 felt like it could also be bishop e6 could be the move. What I was thinking was on bishop e6, there's bishop c4. And the idea, guys, is that when you take on c4, there's knight c4. And now you've improved your opponent's knights, so this one can come to d5. And this knight has been invited to create pressure against d6, which is very annoying. And I knew if this position is okay for black, he has to respond correctly, and he has to do it now. And I wasn't sure what my move would be in this position. And already this position is plus 1.5 points for white. Not winning, but very, very nice for white. So black would have to find the correct move here. I did opt to play bishop e6, and my opponent played knight d5, which is actually not the best move and allows black to equalize pretty easily. And you might be saying, why is that the case? Because there's bishop takes d5. And I've done enough studies in this opening to know my head was just telling me right away bishop d5 was fine. It was the move. So I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I played it pretty quickly within a couple of minutes. And here I thought my opponent was just in big trouble. Because on e takes d5, it looks very pleasant for white. He's hitting your knight on f6 is pinned. You got to move this knight. It looks nice. But the fact of the matter is that this d5 pawn is only defended by the queen. And you actually have queen a5, check. And when he does something to stop the check, you have queen d5. And now all these lines are better for black. Say bishop takes f6, we have to take the queen. And now there's rook takes d1 and gf6. And in a lot of these lines, you're in a scenario as black where you're up a pawn. White has compensation because of the structure, and he might be able to hold, but most human beings would rather still be black here and have the extra pawn and be able to put on that pressure. And I agree. I agree with that evaluation. So I thought my opponent was just in big trouble here. And the other thing I was thinking is if he tries to play bishop takes f6 as an in-between move, hoping for queen f6 or gf6, and then takes back, there's actually queen a5. And on c3, there's bishop takes e4. And black is up a pawn, and he's got to save his bishop. And black should just be up a pawn and just be completely winning. And that is indeed the case. But what I didn't notice was there's actually a move here I missed, which is queen d5. And black is actually fine after taking the queen with the knight. And that's what I played. But it's playable for white. Bishop takes queen. And now the best move for black is rook takes d8, ed5, and now I had to decide where to put the knight. If I go knight b4, we get our knight trapped with c3. Actually, we don't. Knight b4, we don't. c3 isn't played first because knight takes pawn. They'll be like bishop c4. Bishop c4 defending the pawn. And then c3 kicking my knight. And my knight actually wouldn't have any safe squares in that position. So I have to be careful not to get trapped. So coming back felt like more natural. Attacking d5. Now he has to defend So he castles, then he defends. And I played g6. And here I started really to think about the situation going on in the tournament. Because I had a fine position here. I knew I might even be slightly better. But I started to think about, if this game does end in a draw, what are my chances of winning the tournament? And the reason I was thinking about that was because if I draw this game, I might drop down to a scenario where I'm playing someone lower rated again, which would give me an easier chance of getting to 3.5 and allow me probably to save some energy for harder games, potentially. And so I did decide here in my mind that if my opponent wanted to draw, I was actually happy with that. And so after b4, the idea of b4 is to play b5. I played bishop h6, and I actually offered a draw. My opponent declined, and he played king b1. So, he has 100 points plus points higher rated than me, so this is natural. And he doesn't think he's going to lose the game, so he rightfully decided to play this out and fight. I admire that, and that's more of a mentality I need to get into, because I should be able to trust myself here that I'm not going to lose this game, because there really isn't any reason I should lose this position. I am the one in a better position, and I should still be playing to win. So I castled, and he played b5, and here I played some subpar moves. He is attacking our a6 pawn twice, but he's not threatening to take, guys. Say I'll just play a random move. f5, takes, loses to rook a8, hitting the bishop and the knight behind it. So he's going to lose material. So I took on b5, which is unnecessary. I'm still fine, but is unnecessary. And then my opponent has a very nice knight on b5, and now I'm stuck defending d6, which is a little annoying. I played rook d7. Not the best move, not the worst move either. And my opponent played g4. And the idea behind g4 is he would like me to take on g4. So now his rook is open on this line. And if I do something like g5, or I don't know, this pawn takes away the knight's ability to go to f5, which is where it kind of wanted to go. And he's attacking my bishop. So that pawn on g4 would be very nice. And I also decided I don't really want him to take on h5 and gh5. I didn't like the structure that created on my king side. So I decided to play h4, which is fine. Rook g1, the idea of rook g1, really simple, guys, is just to play g5 and to kick my bishop to a bad diagonal. So I played f6. So now on g5 I can just take with the bishop. And he played knight c3. And here I started to think, well, I do need to be careful in this position, because knight on e4 is an annoying piece, because both my rooks are going to be tied down to defending pawns. So I do need to be a little careful. So I played rook c8. I attacked his knight. And I saw knight e4. I figured he's still going to play knight e4. And now, guys, you cannot allow knight f6. Now we have nothing defending this pawn. And knight f6 would be a fork. So I had decided I was going to play king f7 here. So I played these moves pretty quickly once I thought about the position initially. Now he finally decides to move his bishop. And I played bishop g5. Not necessary. Not necessarily, but not losing either. So basically what I'm saying is you can take on g5 and you can double my g-pawns, but you're not really going to be able to exploit these double g-pawns because you can't really attack them. And now your knight, the best piece of that position for white was the knight, because it was creating pressure on d6. Now there's no pressure. Now my rooks are free to move. Now I can work on redeploying the knight somewhere active. Now it's a lot easier to play for black. So my opponent, he saw that taking on g5 is not good, and he didn't do it. He attacked my rook. And now we have to move the rook to d8. We have to defend d6. Rook c7 runs into another fork, knight d6. So that's no good. And so rook d8 is the move. And now my opponent played c4. So he's just trying to help defend his pawn on d5 and basically just see what I'm going to play. I played bishop f4, just improving my bishop. And the other idea behind bishop f4 is I want to play g5. I want to play g5. I want to put the knight in a scenario where it's going to have to move to like g5, and then we can swap off the bishop for the knight. And if f5 he goes back, we just take. So really the only way to hold on to the knight if you wanted to is f5, knight c3. And then I'm starting to get play in the position. So rook d3, not really sure what the purpose of that is. That rook is not going anywhere on the g file. Oh, maybe it's going to a3. Yeah, it's going to a3 maybe. So f5 takes. And here's the issue, guys. Knight d2 runs into e4, attacking his rook, and his rook is trying to defend the knight. And the only way it can continue to defend the knight is to go to d4. And now the rook's just looking silly because there's bishop here. And now my opponent has to settle for the fact that he's going to lose an exchange with knight b3 and let me take. So knight d2 would lose on the spot. Knight c3 is very passive, and I still have e4. So I figured he's going to go knight g5. Knight g5, and we're going to trade. That's what happened. And I played rook g8 here, but king f6 is much stronger. But rook g8 is fine as well. Takes and takes. And now c5. So at this point, if there was any worry about me holding the position and being able to make a draw if I want it, now I had pretty much decided there's not really any chance I'm going to blunder at this point. I know this is a really good position for me, and it's white who's fighting to hold. So what's he threatening with c5, guys? Well, he's threatening to take on d6. And if we take, he has d6. And the issue is that when our knight moves somewhere, there's bishop c4, skewing our king and our rook. So he's trying to hit me with kind of the last little trick in the position, but now I just have rook d8. And he plays bishop c4, covering his d5 pawn. I played king f6, so I'm stepping out of any sort of diagonal pressure. And discoveries that would happen if I play this. Now he wins my knight with discovered check. So after king f6, I know I'm chilling. I know I'm chilling here. And my opponent played rook b3 and he offered a draw. At this point, I was pretty confident that I was better. At least marginally better. At least -1. But here I couldn't figure out because my opponent's offering a draw and he's already turned down 2 in the game. So now it's a scenario where either it's a draw or he's losing. So I had plenty of time on the clock at this point to try to evaluate the position. Unfortunately, I thought for a long time and decided that even though I can win a pawn here, I don't think I have enough to win the position. And that is actually the wrong evaluation of the position. So dc5 was what I was looking at. Rook b7, knight d5, bishop d5, and rook d5. And in my head when I was thinking about this position was, I know I'm up a pawn. I know I'm up a pawn. But in my mind's eye, I kind of felt like the a pawn could be running really fast here. So I agreed to the draw. I'll kind of show you a sample variation of what happens with best play. The truth of the matter is I just horribly underestimated this position for black. It's a pretty easy position for black, and he is completely winning. So you go c4, and this pawn is now stopped. And white's best move is king c1. And now I imagine we're just going to bring our king in and we're going to start pushing these pawns. And we're going to have too many passed pawns, and eventually we're going to queen while white is stuck. He can't really do anything with the A pawn. So this would be easily winning, and I'm bummed now, especially in light of how the tournament played out as a whole. This would have been a big game to win. This would have been a big game to win. And even had it not been a winning advantage, and again, I wasn't sure in the moment, guys, whether I had enough to win the position. I should have been playing this game out to win. That is one of the lessons I walked away from this tournament is I need to trust myself more in positions that I'm slightly better, even if I'm playing people that are higher rated. I need to trust myself. I need to say, it still might end in a draw, but I need to play this position out to win because this half point could be crucial. And it was crucial the way the tournament played out. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this game. Again, the first game that I've played against my former student. He hasn't been my student for years, by the way, guys. So, but yeah, a fun first game with a former student, and fun to play somebody who's passed me rating-wise. Very, very proud of him for what he's achieved, and look forward to hopefully sometime in the next several months seeing him hit expert. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this game. Leave comments in the notes below, and yeah, I'll see you later for the round 4 recap. Thank you very much.